Whatever's in there, it's big and it's moving fast. Go. It's Tyler Owens, Tornado Wrangler. If you feel it, chase it! All right, here we go. Oh, she's perfect!
She's gorgeous!
You thought you could destroy a tornado.
We never had a chance.
You want one? You don't face your fears. You ride them.
We got twins! Twins! Was that it?
Nope.
All right, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another PC Boys podcast. I am your host, Logan Locke, and today we are simply doing a movie review. It's been a long time since I've done one, and this movie was a very good film. So we're gonna, of course, go into deep dive on the story, the characters, what I did and didn't like about it. But we're gonna start off with the spoiler-free part, of course, as I do with my movie reviews. So we'll start off with that. So, things that I enjoyed about the movie. The CGI looked pretty good on all the tornadoes. I thought that was very, very well done. I thought the characters were also very well done as well in terms of their story and likability, which is a very big contrast from the original Twisters. It's not that I disliked or liked the characters. It's just I didn't feel anything for the most part outside of Bill. And Helen Hunt's character. They were the only two that I really cared about in that film. But yeah, so CGI was good, characters were great, chemistry was really good, the story was okay. I mean, I get what they were going for. I mean, there's only so much you can do with tornadoes in general in terms of a movie plot, especially when they're like the main focus as to, you know, them going after them. But outside of those few things, there's not really a heck of a lot I can, like, say spoiler-free wise. But yeah, the only main thing I didn't really care for, or that really bothered me being a big weather fanatic, is how the tornadoes acted and how much of a threat they really posed. But we'll get into that when we get into the spoiler section, of course. But yeah, so overall, like spoiler-free wise, that's all I can say. Really good characters. I thought the CGI looked really good. As well as the story was pretty decent. The only major, thing I have to complain about is the tornadoes and how much of a threat they pose to the main characters in the story. And that's really about it. But for that, I will be giving it a 7.5. But if you are interested as to my deep dive reasons and, of course, spoiler reasons, do stick around. But for those of you that haven't seen the movie yet and kind of want like my quick thoughts on what I did and didn't like, that's basically the best way I can sum it up. Now, for those of you that are here for spoilers or just want my in-depth thoughts, you have been warned. So, let's talk about the main characters of this movie. And we have Anthony Ramos essentially playing a character that lost his friends in the beginning of the movie, as well as our main protagonist. And his whole goal of the movie is to essentially get money from this guy that's trying to essentially profit off of those that lose their houses and go through these natural disasters. And in order to do that, he's been equipped with a bunch of like high-tech storm gear. We have our main character, who's played by, I believe her name is Daisy Edgar Jones. I could be wrong, but hold on. Let me quickly, of course, pull this up. Just so that way I'm not saying it wrong for the entire interview. And as I do these things, I like to be as accurate as possible. I mean, my thoughts, pretty easy one, but I think it's Daisy Edgar Jones. Daisy Edgar Jones. Okay, I was right. So, her main character in this story is, in the beginning of the movie, she's trying to find a way to, like, disrupt the tornado, to, like, stop it, and have it deform. However, it goes completely wrong, getting her entire team killed, which is kind of like the starting premise, and it is to an F5 tornado, so very similar to the original Twisters that started off with Helen Hunt's character losing her dad to an F5 tornado. So she ends up moving to New York, working at the National Weather Service there, and staying away from Oklahoma and the tornadoes and the chasing. And Anthony Ramos' character kind of comes in, is like, we can save people now that we have these new devices to be able to, predict a tornado and get a 3D model. Kind of like the similar premise of like the first film of like, oh, we need to get these sensors up into the tornado. And so she agrees to go back. And when she goes back, she ends up meeting, I think it's Tyler Rowlands or Owens. Let me just also make sure about that. Tyler Owens, who is a YouTuber that chases tornadoes and drives into the middle of them and does a bunch of crazy stunts, right? And that's kind of like his whole thing. So that's who Glenn Powell's playing, right? And that's like his main character's thing, and he ends up like falling for this girl, and they have like this rivalry throughout the entire movie where they try to get to the tornadoes first and guess who's right and stuff, and Daisy's character just happens to have this intuition of knowing the weather and how it's going to change and what it does. And this, so the first half of the movie is them trying to get like this information. The second half of the movie is basically her and Tyler, getting closer to each other in like a romantic interest way. But then Tyler's character ends up like tracking her down and trying to help her make this solution stuff that she did in the beginning of the movie to stop tornadoes. Now, by the end, of course, you have the big F5 tornado that encloses in on El Reno, which is a real town that was hit by a F3 tornado with wind speeds of over 300 miles per hour at one point, and its max width being the longest ever recorded in history at 2.6 miles wide. And as a weather fanatic, I know about this tornado very in-depthly. It also took the lives of Tim Samaras and the Twist X team. Rest their souls. But El Reno and the El Reno tornado is a real tornado. However, it was not an F5 technically, because the damage recorded was only of F3 caliber, but it was over a mostly rural area. So, of course, it'd be very hard to detect F5 tornadic damage being in a rural setting. But the wind speeds and the size of it very much said it should be an F5 in terms of what it's labeled, but technically it's F3. Because, for those of you that don't know, a little bit of a weather fact here, tornadoes are based, or they are recorded in terms of their scaling based upon the damage that they produce, not how big they are or wind speeds. But just to keep that in mind. So El Reno is the town where the final tornado ends up going, and Daisy Edgar's character basically runs into the tornado with the truck with the solution that her and Tyler came up with, and it stops the tornado before it hits the town. And that's like the basics of the movie. Now, obviously, throughout here, you see other tornadoes, F1s that are ropes, F2, F3 stovepipes, and F4 in the middle of the night during a rodeo, which is funny because it's supposed to be the movie theater scene from the first movie with the F4, although I didn't really feel anything when it came to this one. But I gotta say, this movie has a lot of actual factual information in it. When it comes to tornadoes, they talk about CAPE levels, right? They talk about inflow. They talk about pretty much all the science lingo that you could think of, but it's all true. It's all factually based. So props to the team for having factual tornado information. Also, in the beginning of the movie, before the team dies, Daisy's character says we shouldn't go to the overpass because getting underneath an overpass or an underpass, whatever, the speeds of the wind pick up quickly and basically speed up. So you never want to be under an overpass during a tornado because it makes those wind speeds a lot faster. And especially if it's whipping debris through there, that means that makes it more dangerous. The best thing you can do with a tornado is find the lowest point possible, whether that's a ditch or whatever, and cover your head. That way the tornado or the winds can't pick you up and throw you into the sky, but also whatever debris is getting flung at you, you can, take cover from. And actually, during the nighttime tornado in this movie, they take refuge in a pool, which is actually really smart because the winds can't get down in there and pick people up, or the debris gets thrown away from you or is less likely to hit you, which is also a very smart thing to do. So there's a lot of like realistic stuff in this movie in terms of the information that they give, in terms of like how to deal with tornadoes in dangerous situations. So props to them for doing that. And this is stuff I knew back in like middle school because I watched Twisters back when I was in elementary, entering middle school, and I became very fascinated with tornadoes and storm chasing and storms altogether, but tornadoes being like my main fascination. So, it's very nice to see that they incorporated real information into this and didn't just throw in random words. Also, like wind shear, cape levels, all that's very important in terms of, tornado production and stuff. The rain-wrapped F5 at the very beginning of the movie, also a very real thing that happens and is very dangerous. And matter of fact, the El Reno tornado was a rain-wrapped multi-vortex tornado when it happened. But at the end of this movie, it was just a regular F5 tornado headed towards the town. So, let's talk about the characters. Daisy Edgar plays basically your weather wizard that knows everything about weather, and her whole goal is, I want to stop a tornado with like my special solution, which she does successfully. Tyler Owen's character is basically any character that Powell plays because he's just good at playing a dickhead most of the time, but with a heart of gold. And he does the same thing here. He's being very competitive, very reckless when it comes to chasing down these tornadoes, but he ends up, developing a fascination for Daisy's character and wanting to, work with her and kind of studying her and how she's able to predict the weather and have these deep insights. But Tyler is a very selfless character, very courageous character, which I think is very good qualities that they show in this movie. But I will say, those are those two, and then, like I said, Anthony Ramos' character in the spoiler-free part is basically this guy that just, wants to make money. But by the end of the movie, he comes to his senses and goes to the town of El Reno to help everybody when the big F5's coming towards the town. And ultimately, there's good jokes in here. There are very good times, very lighthearted. There's a lot of callbacks to the original. Obviously, you have Dorothy. A lot of Wizard of Oz references where you have people in the teams that are driving different vehicles being named Tin Man and Scarecrow. And then Wizard. Obviously, Wizard of Oz, names to go with the Dorothy device, as well as them talking to Daisy's character being like, I'm glad you're back, and she's like, I'm not back, just like Bill in the first movie, or talking about the suck zone. Glenn Powell's, character, at one point in the movie, they drive into the middle of a tornado, and they're like, we're in the suck zone, and that's another callback to the original movie. The nighttime tornado scene is a callback to the original movie. So there's a lot of callbacks to the original. This is a sequel to the original in the same canonical universe, but that's it. Outside of a few references and it being in the same universe, in that regard, these characters don't know the characters from the prior movie, which was very interesting. But also just the way that they show the actual aftermath of tornadoes, right? In the very first Twister movie, the only time you saw the aftermath and how that affected people was the F4 that went through, I think it was Wichita or Wakita, Kansas, and almost killed Joe's grandmother. That is the only scene in the original Twister that actually showed the damage that tornadoes cause and how people deal with that. But in this movie, after every tornado that happens, they show the damage that tornado caused and how it affects people. How it affects people during the moments of the tornado, the fear, the chaos that happens. All these things happen in real life. And I'm very glad that they touched upon that, because while this is a big blockbuster movie where you got tornadoes and you got people chasing them, it's a very devastating thing that happens in a lot of people's lives. And a lot of people live in, this dangerous region of Tornado Alley where tornadoes wreak havoc and destroy entire lives of families, towns, and communities. So it's very good that they show that and display in this movie the realities of tornadoes and the destruction that they have. So I was very happy that they did that as well, as somebody that's into weather. But overall, characters were all likable. The story was very serviceable. It was basically the same thing as the original. Get into a tornado, release prototype thing. But while in the original, it was to have advanced warning systems to get that information. In this movie, it was to disrupt a tornado and end a tornado by using some special solution. But which essentially would like cause the moisture inside the tornado to turn into rain or whatever, and it would just disrupt the whole thing and destroy it on a molecular level. But yeah, it was a good movie. You know, it was a lot more heartfelt than the original. There was a lot more in-depthness, emotional feels in this movie than I had in the original by far. I think the original movie did a great job at making you like excited about chasing the tornadoes and made you very excited about the tornadoes on screen, because the tornadoes, and this is my major gripe with this movie, the tornadoes in the original felt dangerous, right? They felt like anytime the characters got close to one, even one of the smaller rope tornadoes, that there was danger present, that they could die, that, you know, there's a lot of chaos there. But in this movie, it's the complete opposite. They drive into tornadoes multiple times in this movie. The tornadoes don't even seem to pose a threat to them. And that's what makes like the final tornado of the movie very disappointing, because it's the same kind of feeling where she ends up driving into an F5 tornado and has the time somehow to put down the drills that will hold her in place. Like, it's so unrealistic, and the amount of, you know, suspense to your disbelief you have to do to make it make sense is laughable. And as a real life weather nut, it's like, dude, you wouldn't even be able to get to the base of the tornado before getting flung in the air. Because for those of you that don't know, when tornadoes happen, outside of that tornado, there's a wind vortex. And essentially, think about it like this, right? You know how you have, like, in the old days, you had castles, and then you had walls that surrounded the castle, so that way if people did break through the walls, you had time to, like, prepare to fight back against the enemy. Tornadoes are kind of the same way. The tornado is the castle, and the outer wind vortex is like the outside walls. You're going to hit that vortex well before you even hit the main mass of the tornado, and those things will make your car fly, throw you into the twister, whip the debris around. That's what it will do. Okay? And to be clear here, the tornadoes looked phenomenal. Like, the CGI on the tornadoes looked great. They even used real-life shots of tornadoes in this movie. That looked great. But there was no danger with these tornadoes. Driving into these tornadoes, getting right up to them constantly in the movie did not make them scary at all. Even the F5 at the very end of the film. But the very beginning of this movie made me hopeful for the rest of the movie and the tornadoes in it. Because the beginning of this movie starts off with a rain-wrapped F5. And this thing approaches them. You can barely see it. But you can see the damage that it does. And, you know, taking their vehicle and making it fly through the air as they're running to the underpass or the overpass. It very much highlights danger. It kills like 4 people or 3 people right off the bat in the movie. And it makes you look at it and you're like, wow, this is going to be a very, you know, scary movie and keep me on the edge of my seat. And it wasn't. Because we went from a tornado in the very beginning in F5 that you could barely see, that was rain-wrapped, that was acting like a normal tornado, you know, wisping everything up, that was even remotely far away from it. And then you go into the rest of the movie and you watch them chase these other twisters, and they're just driving into the middle of them and you know, putting down their drills into the ground and anchoring their car so they can sit in the middle of the tornado. And it's just not realistic. And it's not scary. Like at one scene, they got in front of the tornado's path and then they did the drills, which makes sense. But even then, it's like, with the debris that the tornado's picking up and throwing around, you would think that there would be a lot more danger. And that's my major gripe with this movie. The tornadoes don't feel dangerous. But the one thing this movie does better than the original is have a great cast that you feel for. There's emotion, there's heart in the movie. And they touch, of course, upon like the destructive effects that tornadoes have on families and communities, which is awesome and great, and I'm glad they did that. But the tornadoes themselves weren't scary. they didn't really feel like they posed a threat. They looked great, and a lot of the science, the advice, and safety tips they give about tornadoes, or little nuggets that they give about tornadoes, are real, factual things. But the tornadoes didn't really pose a threat to the main characters throughout this whole movie, including the big one at the end, which somehow can pull people's cars and a whole, train in the middle of the town when it's literally football fields away, pulling all this shit towards a tornado. But this one girl driving the car directly at the tornado, getting right up to the thing, and that truck doesn't just get flown away, but things way hundreds of yards away in the town is getting flung at the tornado. Yeah. Not buying it, right? And that's kind of the major gripe I have with this film. Tornadoes in real life wouldn't let you get that close with the wind vortex, like I said, on the way outside of the tornado. And then even with the in-movie logic of the things that were getting pulled into the tornado and how far away they were, it was not believable. So everything about the tornado in the movie, it just didn't make it scary. The original, though, while the story was very simple and you didn't really exactly care for the team that was in the movie, like you do in this one, because they just didn't have as much in-depth character and charisma like this one does, the tornadoes were scary. Even water spouts in the original Twister pose more of a threat than the tornadoes in this movie. And that's the thing. The soundtrack of the original film, the roars and the growls of the tornado in the original film hit so much harder than in this movie. While these ones looked more realistic and visually stunning, outside of the looks, they were relatively underwhelming. So I would say if you're looking for a fun movie that has a good cast that you care for and, a serviceable story with tons of Twister action, this is your movie. But if you're looking to actually have the tornado terrify you or scare you or unnerve you, I would watch the original. I think the original does a great job at making the tornadoes a big threat and terrifying when they're on screen, even though the CGI is not as good as this movie, obviously. The ones in this one don't. And that's kind of the major thing about it, right? They're scary at points, especially right in the beginning, that first tornado. Very scary. But after that, not so much. So, it really depends on how you look at it. The other thing that did not work for me in this movie, the love story. What the fuck were they? What were they thinking in the writing room with this love story? I would have been fine with the two characters just being friends or, just helping each other, trying to, help people, right? I'd have been fine with that. They make Daisy Edgar and Glenn Powell have this romance, going on, but she also is being crushed on by Anthony Ramos, and it's a love triangle that's not really well conveyed in this film. I don't care for it. They could have done without that plot, and it would have been a great movie just the same. And at the end of the day, while the character is enjoyable and they have heart and charisma, they're that whole romance subplot they could have done away with. I get it in the original movie. They literally in the beginning of the first Twister were Joe and Bill, they're going through a divorce, signing divorce papers, and Bill's with this other girl. So they bring the love triangle from the original to this movie, but in the worst way they could do it. In the first movie, it was right out of the gate. It was established and organic. In this movie, you see Daisy Edgar have a boyfriend in the beginning who dies to a tornado. And then you see Anthony Ramos have a crush on her, which wasn't even hinted at in the beginning of the movie. And it's just kind of something they did to have Glenn Powell, I guess, have a romance, conflict of interest, I guess. And it just doesn't work. And it's kind of stupid. So, yeah, romance story-wise, I didn't really care for it in this story. But It's funny because this movie I looked forward to much more than I did, for Deadpool and Wolverine. But as Deadpool and Wolverine gets closer, and after today's final trailer that they released, I'm clearly more hyped for Deadpool and Wolverine and to do a review on that than I am for Twisters. But Twisters is by far the second most excited movie I have for this year. I am excited for Alien and Terrifier 3, but this and Deadpool are like my top 2 movies of the year that I've been waiting for. And this movie didn't disappoint me much. Okay? It was a solid movie. I loved it. But I wish the tornadoes were scarier. And I wish that they conveyed the danger that tornadoes are more than just, we're going to drive into the tornado, we're going to put down the drills, and we're going to sit and videotape and yeehaw the whole time. Like, don't get me wrong, like, it's fun, it's energetic. Like, you got people in the movie theater, they're getting into it, but at the same time, it's like, realistically, you wouldn't be getting that close to a tornado. It'd suck you up or throw something at you that would kill you. And that's the thing. Even small tornadoes can go big. So there's always an unknown element to the movie. So, yeah. There's also no water spouts in this movie, so for anybody that wanted that, or any cows, no flying cows in this movie. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, Twisters is a solid 7.5. Some people say it's an 8, some people say it's a 9. I give it a solid 7.5, and that is also because I am a weather geek who loves tornadoes, has done a lot of research from middle school to now on them, and as somebody that does now a weather channel, go check out PC Boys Weather on Rumble. But, as somebody that is a big weather nerd, loves weather, and watches it for fun, there were parts in here where I was like, okay, you're really, suspending my belief here, or dissuspending my belief here. And I know people have to do that anyways, but as a weather person, it's even more than the average Joe. But with that background, yes, there's a little bit of it that does bother me, as well as comparing it to the original. So, both are great movies. I think the original is still better than this one, but I have a lot of nostalgia for the original Twister, but this movie's great. I can't wait to buy it on Blu-ray, maybe a steelbook if they put one out for it. But yeah, it was a great time. Gonna definitely watch it again when it comes out. But for those of you, I highly recommend to go watch this movie. It's good, fun time. But if you're debating on this or Deadpool, I would say probably save for Deadpool. I mean, unless you're like a either big Daisy Edgar fan, or a big Glenn Powell fan, or a big Tornado fan. I mean, or a weather guy. Unless you're anything like that, and maybe you only can go to one or a few movies a year, I would probably recommend Deadpool over this. But if any of those things that I listed are things that you love, yeah, this will be the movie for you. But thank you very much for listening. I hope you all enjoyed. I know this isn't as energetic as most, movie reviews have been in the past, but you gotta remember, this is a different kind of movie. It's a sequel, but it's been a long time since the original, and also I'm giving, my weather perspective on it all. So that's the other thing that plays into it. But thank you very much for watching. Hope you all enjoyed. Check out PC Boys on Rumble. The link for our link tree will be in the description, which can, of course, take you to that weather channel. But until next time, which will probably be very soon because we got to talk about that Deadpool trailer and do that Deadpool review next weekend, I will catch you all in the next ones.